Joint ECOWAS and ECA Security Summit ends in Lomé with condemnation of violent conflicts between farmers and herders in member countries.
President Buhari charges leaders of West and Central African states to unite in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism.
ECOWAS election observation mission to Mali gives interim verdict on the conduct of the election.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we discuss the challenges of managing political parties in Nigeria.
Well, there are 68 registered political parties and over 100 political associations seeking registration in Nigeria. This number might likely double before the elections. This poses huge challenge in terms of logistics, finances, structure, and scope, including the production of ballot papers. Undoubtedly, INEC might not be able to monitor the congresses, conventions, and primaries of all parties contesting over 1,000 elective positions each across the nation.
Indeed, Kirian, that is just one aspect that concerns the electoral management body, that is INEC. Now, there are also the lingering challenges of how effectively political parties are being managed in order to attain coherence in terms of party discipline, ideology, as well as, of course, processes and organs of the various political parties, and then attaining, if you like, coherence amongst not just the members, but between the members and the electorate at large.
Now, those are pertinent issues you have raised, Kingsley, because a political party is an assemblage of men and women with same ideological standpoint, with the motive of taking over power and forming government. But in Nigeria, as often said, different bedfellows coming together, a recipe for conflicts, disagreements, and indiscipline.
Well, Kirian, there is another challenge that we are now very familiar with, and it has to do with the issue of funding and the effective management of the funds by the political parties. So one question to ask, therefore, is how are political parties funded? And is there accountability and transparency in the management of those funds? And what is therefore giving rise to the notion of plutocracy that is pervading the polity?
All right, Kingsley, but that's right. And it's even believed that many political parties in Nigeria only come alive during elections solely to qualify for the 30% subvention from the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to all registered political parties. But after that, they vanish to oblivion. The largesse is said to have been stopped. How then do parties run campaigns, sensitize the electorate, and manifestos and voter education?
Well, there is another issue. It is often said that the number of political parties do not, as it were, know, and in fact do not have a database of their membership strength. And that during elections, this election cycle, groups of people, some of them with family ties and just friends, come together to form political parties for reasons that are less than stellar. And that's why many political party secretariats, is said, are to be found only at obscure locations.
All right, Kingsley, that's what I said. And it is also said that who pays the piper calls for the shout. Therefore, who is supposed to monitor and regulate the activities of these political parties before, during, and after election?
INEC, of course, has both the constitutional and legal responsibilities to monitor and regulate political parties. But the parties themselves have a duty of running their own affairs. So, how well are the parties managing themselves? That is the crux of the issue.
And these are some of the key issues in our conversation with political party chieftains and stakeholders on the challenges of managing political parties in Nigeria. Many thanks to you for joining us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria this Tuesday. Well, we are reaching you live on the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest television network. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Kirian in also welcoming you to the program, in the course of which we shall bring you business, newspaper review, sports, foreign, and others. Counting is, of course, on the way. The presidential and, in fact, in the general elections that took place in Zimbabwe yesterday, and the Malians are expecting, of course, the outcome of their own elections. In the meantime, let's join our colleague Musbah Odonwaham for the highlights of the morning news. Hi, Musbah.
Hello, Kingsley and Kirian. Good morning. This is the news. I am Musbah Odonwaham. The joint ECOWAS and the Economic Community of Central African Summit on Security has ended in Lomé, with the heads of state and governments strongly condemning the escalating number and extent of violent conflicts between farmers and herders in member countries. In a communique issued after the summit, the participants were particularly worried over the high number of fatalities as well as the stigmatization of specific groups of society. A 37-point declaration was also adopted on peace, security, stability, and the fight against terrorism.
Pretending to be local Funai people and have been creating a lot of criminal activities in some parts of the states and country. I think this is important because to address this issue, we need the buy-in of all neighboring states.
There's an emergency for us to have an international boundary patrol agency. This, what has happened and what I have seen here today, shows clearly that the problems of insecurity, the issues of kidnapping, this international transboundary and migration of stolen people is beyond the carrying capacity of the state.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has charged 24 other leaders of the West and Central African states to forge a united front in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism towards achieving peace, security, and stability in member countries. This was at the joint ECOWAS and ECA summit in Lomé, the Republic of Togo.
And nobody but us would want peace. Therefore, it is our responsibility to work together towards the promotion of peace and stability in view of the development of our continent.
Away from Togo, the ECOWAS Election Observation Mission to Mali has given its interim verdicts on the conduct of elections held on Sunday. At a press briefing in Bamako, Mali, the head of the mission, Kadri Ouedraogo, said the exercise was transparent despite the violence recorded in some areas.
Is that globally the election went on in a free and peaceful atmosphere, but we noticed also some minor errors due to the lack of training of some members of the polling station. We've therefore made a recommendation for the training of all the members of the polling station.
To security matters, the Air Task Force of Operation Lafia Dole has successfully conducted a massive attack on the Ontongole village, 9 kilometers southwest Dikwa in Borno State. A statement by the Director of Public Relations and Information, Air Vice Marshal Olatokunbo Adesanya, indicates that the successful airstrikes were sequel to credible intelligence reports which indicate that several Boko Haram terrorists were regrouping at the location, having occupied the entire village. Receiving the intelligence, the Air Task Force deployed NAV Alpha Jet aircraft and Mi-35M helicopter gunship, which attacked structures occupied by Boko Haram terrorists in the location. As a result of the airstrikes, several Boko Haram terrorists were neutralized, while few survivors seen fleeing were taken out in subsequent follow-up attacks, resulting to colossal battle damage assessment. The federal government has continued to clamp down on the abuse of cough syrup containing codeine. That explains the withdrawal of more than 2.4 million bottles of such products. The Ministry of Health is strictly supervising and coordinating the entire process, with NAFDAC actively meeting with all drug and pharmaceutical companies in the country to ensure strict compliance with the ban of codeine in the country.
You will recall, custom impounded a truckload of codeine containing cough syrup. NAFDAC has actually enforced the recall We do not need to destroy them, because what we are saying is that we will enforce the distribution. We want it to be administered only on the basis of prescription, because we've not really banned the use of codeine containing cough syrup, because there might be medical indication to use it.
Now to some political matters. The newly elected Speaker, Kano State House of Assembly, Kabiru Al-Hassan Rurum, has been sworn in. This is the second coming of a Speaker in the 8th legislature. He was elected following the impeachment of former Speaker Yusuf Abdullahi, accused of gross incompetence and dereliction.
I do my personal best to ensure this House keep on touching the life of the citizen of Kano.
Meanwhile, the current crisis rocking the Benue State House of Assembly has continued to deepen as there are claims and counterclaims of suspension by two groups. One of the latest developments is a notice of impeachment to be served on Governor Samuel Otom.
If members want us to sit for whatever reasons and whatever interest they think is of public importance, they will now request that I reconvene the House. In that case, I will ask when I see that the reasons are nice or good or reasonable enough, I will now ask the clerk to do that. Within 1 week, he will do it. But for myself, who is the Speaker, I do not need to ask the clerk to give a notice.
The Imo State Deputy Governor, Prince Eze Madumere, has been impeached for gross misconduct leveled against him by 19 out of 27 members of the House of Assembly. The House approved the nomination of Callistus Ekenze as a new Deputy Governor. That's the news this morning. We'll be back to Kingsley and Karen shortly after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Win a trip to Dubai in the 2018 3 Crowns Mom of the Year promo. Visit www.femininelounge.com/competition to find out more.
3 Crowns Milk. Healthy moms, happy families.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
The social media era has brought goodies to the society. Telecoms like our own dear indigenous Glo has brought us data to smarten our lives in today's smart world. Oh yes, but are you using the social media wisely? Or are you spreading sensation, half-truths and lies?
Na viral video nami atalam po alani. So if alani I got the spread and for viral message, that one nang asabian, it no concern me.
Viral videos is the title of this week's episode of Professor John Bull. Join us and laugh like never before.
Come 4 p.m.
4 p.m. is evening, now we're talking about afternoon.
Say who you say is evening.
4 o'clock, evening starts.
I don't know they've changed the time. Oh.
Nobody changed anything. It has been like that since I became a human being.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glo.
The largest data network. Glo Unlimited.
You are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. Now we turn to business. Stakeholders react to the recent eviction notice served Nigerian traders doing business in Ghana by the Ghanaian authority. Comfort Amodu has more on this on Business News.
Let's begin with the report that concerned stakeholders have called on the federal government to revisit the ECOWAS treaties, binding member states and leverage on its backing to resolve the challenges faced by Nigerians living and doing business in neighboring states. This is in reaction to the recent eviction notice served Nigerian traders doing business in Ghana by the Ghanaian authority. Although the eviction notice has been suspended, stakeholders fear that until a lasting solution is devised, what the traders refer to as a recurrent harassment may persist, adding that tension is also mounting. Meanwhile, ECOWAS officials say the organization is addressing the challenge, especially the removal of foreigner status by member states, as it is not in tandem with ECOWAS policy of a community. Official figures reveal that Nigerian traders own about 60% of Nigerian foreign direct investment in Ghana.
Member states have also removed the requirement of resident permit. So if you don't require resident permit, what are you talking about? But the basic principle in terms of discrimination, in terms of establishment, is the principle of non-discrimination. So it is not acceptable in the region. So, but however, we need to also look at how we can resolve this issue amicably.
We need ourselves to cohabit. We need ourselves to build a stronger economy. We need ourselves, and we are talking about common currency for God's sake. We are talking about harmonization of economic policies that will help the economy of the region.
It's not in the best interest of Ghana to say Nigerians should leave. What I'm saying is that if they start with traders, eventually they get into other industries. So it's something that we should have to suspend and stop, cancel that kind of eviction order here and there, and so that the regional integration will work perfectly.
Now, amidst warning of low yield and productivity, the Nigerian government is working with exporters to ensure that cocoa beans leaving the shore of the country are high quality and acceptable on the international market, thereby reducing the incidence of rejection. Aside stakeholder enlightenment, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council is also facilitating access to finance and markets as well as development of the value chain, considering the rapid growth and expansion of chocolate confectionaries and other related products. Latest commodity prices indicate a dip in cocoa prices by 0.13% to $2,254 per metric ton.
We did what they call backward integration. We have 82 hectares of cocoa plantation in Edo State, so that we will be able to also see source for it and also see what exactly is the problem with cocoa production.
And that report takes us to the closing figures of the trades on the floor of the exchange. That's business news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues. I'm Comfort Amadou. Thanks for being there.
Thank you very much, Comfort, for the business package. Next for us now, we'll take a look at the stories on the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
And our newspaper reviewer for today, Mohammed Bello, has just joined us. Mohammed Bello, good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much.
And we are having him for the first time on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, yeah, Kieran, let's begin with you. We have, there are stories that are common to the front pages of the papers. There's political stories, of course, relating to the gale of impeachment and the consequences of defection.
Exactly, and but the three papers that I have here actually have that impeachment saga here. Now, Daily Sun, let's go to Daily Sun. Day of impeachment. We have 3 riders, 8 lawmakers attempt to remove Benue governor. Imo Assembly impeaches deputy governor, clears Ekenze as replacement. And then Kano speaker loses seat, new one elected. Now, the Nigerian pilot is captioned drama as 8 Benue lawmakers suspend 22 others, serve impeachment notice on state governor, accusing Sakume, IGP, DSS, DG of fueling crisis. I will continue to do my duty, says Otom, and it's illegality that must be condemned, says Gemade. And then, of course, on the Tribune, is also on the impeachment issue. 8 Benue lawmakers suspend 15 others, serve notice on Otom, with about 5 riders, 12 members, not 8, start faction. Faction-led Speaker Ikage claims in counter move, 18 pro-governor legislators sit in government house, suspend 8, says 4 others with EFCC. Now, House of Assembly consists of 30 members. Call IGP, DSS to order, Otom tells Buhari. Houses of Assembly remove Imo deputy governor and Kano speaker. These are the headlines in these 3 major newspapers.
All right, let's to take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. The lead story is also on the developments in the polity. Lead story for Blueprint: anxiety as 8 lawmakers serve Otom impeachment notice. 3 riders. Police denied 22 others access, that's 22 other members of the House. Let presidency speak up, and that's attributed to RAPC. Call police to order. Saraki, Dogara, Atiku tell Buhari. Details of the story stories can be found inside on pages 6 and 22. And then below the photograph there on the front page of the Blueprint is the story. Despite court order, Imo Assembly sacks deputy governor. That's on page 18. And then back again to the top, above the lead story, and just on the first column to the right-hand side, you have the headline, one of 2 headlines we're taking from there. APC sacks pro-Saraki Kwara excos, appoints caretaker committee. That's to be found on page 5. And then the Otom story is also lead for the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust newspaper, it says EFCC probes Otom over alleged 20 billion naira laundering. With a rider, 8 lawmakers move against governor, and another rider is targeted for quitting APC. And below the nameplate of the paper, there is also the story out of Kwara. APC dissolves Kwara Exco, appoints caretaker committee. Mohammed.
All right, Mohammed, let's bring you in here.
Yeah.
With respect to the impeachment saga all over the place.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karen. The impeachment saga is a very serious issue, considering that democracy is thriving and the country is moving towards election. But it is not something that is unusual in the polity. It didn't start today, and it has been part and parcel of Nigeria's politics, even way back in the 60s. Now, coming at this time, The only thing that is drawing people's attention is that just in one day you have about three impeachments, one in Kano, one in Benue, and the other one in Imo State. And all of this points to the fact that democracy is growing, like I said, and it is becoming much more robust. The political space is wider, becoming wider for everybody to participate. If your view or your outlook is not in tandem with what is required, then you move aside for somebody to.
But what does it portend for our democracy as a nation?
Well, it means that we're having a lot of activity in the polity, and it suggests that the choices of people will become wider and more open than otherwise. It means that you cannot be straitjacketed. You choose between whoever you want and however you want it.
All right, I'm just wondering, Mohammed and Kyria, because you asked the question, what it portends is that there are serious questions that arise with regard to the rule of law. If it is the principal officers of the legislature who are being removed by their co-equals who are members, that is usually of less consequence in terms of the constitutional or legal implications, provided, of course, they follow due process in whatever they're doing. But the usually challenging circumstance that the polity has had to deal with has been the impeachment and therefore removal from office of either a deputy governor or that of a governor. And then look at the various riders that we have read with respect to what is playing out in Benue. 8 out of the 30 lawmakers purporting to have served the notice or purporting, to serve a notice of impeachment on the governor. We saw this play out. If you refer back again to the Tribune, it's a replay of what happened in Lajoda's case in Oyo State. Exactly. We also saw what happened in Plateau State during Dariye's time. So there are, and then we have had the court decisions on all of this. And then in the case of the Imo deputy governor, there's a court order restraining the State House of Assembly as well as the chief judge from proceeding with the impeachment of a deputy governor. And yet, the Imo House of Assembly has finalized the process.
You see, I wouldn't know what to add to this, except that we are becoming. In fact, we have fashioned our own pattern of democracy, and for me, understanding what that means, it may not really augur well. But whatever the polity says, we follow. Now, let's look at more headlines.
Before headlines, we can't run away from these issues. Those whose rights have been affected should seek to enforce their rights.
Fine, Kingsley. And enforcing your right, you have to do that, like you said, within the law and regulation. And for what we have seen so far in Nigeria, not now, not just for now, like you pointed out what happened in Daria era in Jos, which is some 12 or more years ago.
That's right.
Right, and the thing is repeating itself, over time. So we need to ask pertinent questions as to what kind of democracy do we really need as a nation. Because if we want to copy what we borrowed from the US, the presidential system, then we have to retrace our steps, concerning the current activities of politicians in the country. Now, to other headlines that we have here. Now, Daily Sun, once again, just by the side of the Daily Sun's the nameplate, we have Benue, Saraki, Dogara, Southern Middle Belt Forum furious over autumn's travail. And now down, just in the middle, we have, again, U.S. demands trial of people behind killings in Nigeria. That's on page 3 on the Daily Sun. The Nigerians killing Nigerians in South Africa, says federal government. That's on page 10. Kingsley, I think that's a very serious issue.
That's
Nigerians killing Nigerians in South Africa, and we have that over time now. Now, Governor Almakura sacks 9 commissioners and advisors. Is on page 42. Now, just directly below the photograph on Daily Sun, Ekweremadu exposes plot against him. The story is on page 11.
All right. The Daily Trust newspaper, below the nameplate, we'll take another headline from there. Businesses spend 5 trillion naira yearly on generators. businesses spend 5 trillion naira yearly on generators. That's on page 17. And then below the photograph on the front page there, photograph there shows some INEC officials who have been arraigned by the EFCC at the Federal High Court in Ikoyi, Lagos for alleged conspiracy, diversion of public funds, and money laundering. Now, the three headlines there, let's take two of them. Politicians funding bandits and others, Air Chief says. That's on page 4. And all recovered illegally acquired assets to be sold. That story is attributed to President Muhammadu Buhari, and it's on page 7 in greater detail.
Brother Bello, would you want to comment on the honor of the headlines? Yeah.
Yeah. The dissolution of the Kwara ESCO is also alongside the gale of impeachment that we have witnessed yesterday, and just like the issue of the impeachment, it is also a sign that our politics is becoming more robust. I remember yesterday the minister made a call that the ESCOs should be removed, and a few hours later they were removed. So probably the ESCO was trying to become obstinate or something, and then they have to be shifted, and some realignments made there. And then number 2, the issue of illegally acquired assets to be sold as directed by the president is also something that will draw the attention of Nigerians, because it is an issue that borders on the fight against corruption by the current administration. And it now tells Nigerians what is to be done about the properties and assets that are going to be seized by the government or have been seized by the government in its fight against corruption.
Now, what do you make of these Nigerians killing Nigerians in South Africa?
Well, that's, as you said, but this is a new twist. Something that must seem, in a sense, analogous to what you used to have during the era of apartheid rule, namely, black on black violence. Most of the stories out of South Africa had to do with South African security agents or South Africans murdering Nigerians. And the figures show that from 2016, January 2016, up until recently, it's over 120 Nigerians had been murdered in South Africa. But here you are, in terms of the stories that you just read, Nigerians are now allegedly also taking on one another, in a grim violence that rocks South Africa from time to time. It's quite worrisome.
And you recall the shooting in a church in Anambra State that was rooted, from South Africa, and that means that the Nigerians are really taking themselves out in South Africa based on poor relationship when it comes to business, because all these things border on money and business and all of that. Now, with respect to the issue that Bello tried to raise about the impeachments and, of course, dissolution of ESCO and what have you. Well, if you describe that as a robust politics, fine. But I think that the nation needs to really retrace its steps with respect to the way we handle some issues concerning politics, especially that we're approaching election period.
Yeah, okay. Kyria, let's return to the Blueprint newspaper. There is a story immediately below the nameplate of the Blueprint, and it has to do with the running copy in terms of the insecurity in the northwestern part of the country. The headline from Blueprint is as follows: bandits kill 3, abduct 8-day-old baby. Nursing mothers and 5 others too, and 15 abducted in Zamfara. And that's the first paragraph of the story is as follows. So the spate of killings in Birnigwari communities has continued, with bandits storming Ongwa, Dambaki, Sabonlaye in the Birnigwari local government area of Kaduna State, killing 3 people in the wake of the attacks.
All right, now you have the editorial.
That's right, I have the editorial. And by the way, the president has already deployed a 1,000-man security team to the northwest axis, parts of Sokoto and Zamfara, to deal with the lingering insecurity challenges there. Our editorial this morning is taken from the Punch newspaper and is to be found at page 20. It says, late budget for 2019 general election. The editorial reads in part, budgetary provision for the conduct of the 2019 election was presented to the National Assembly on July 16th, with about 6 months to the polls. This is late, ominous, and objectionable.
Yeah, what's your take on this, Mohamed Bello?
Well, it is. It doesn't portend well for our democracy, because we need to make preparations for the elections ahead of time, and the budget and the budgetary provisions therein are necessary for INEC and other ancillary bodies and agencies to key into the election process. Now, if you allow that to, already it has happened. There's a delay now, so it's going to really tell on the conduct of the election, the planning, the logistics, and other things, because there are things that needs to be in place before the election proper. Now, the delay in the budget means that some things have to be done late, and then it will affect the election in the overall analysis. And like I said, that doesn't will not augur well for the nation.
Again, considering that we have so many political parties this time around, over 60 of them this time around, and there are about 100 political associations also seeking to also be registered. I wonder how that will be handled in the long run.
Well, that's a matter for INEC. INEC is the one registering the political parties. 68 of them are currently registered, and as you said, about 100 applications are pending. But the kernel of the editorial by the Punch, as Mohammed was saying, has to do with the late submission of the expenditure proposals by INEC. Why was the budget for the 2019 election submitted that late in the day? And then we have also seen the country is already in a situation where the National Assembly, the Senate itself, for instance, has gone on vacation. In fact, the House of Reps has also gone on vacation, and they are not due back until September. So when will the proposals be considered? When will they be approved? And then when will INEC now get into its procurement? So the issue is, why didn't INEC submit its proposals either in 2017 or for 2017 or for 2018?
Of course, and there are many tweaks to it, because you have to do the ballot papers, you have to talk about the printings, you have to have so many things to do, including logistics and what have you.
All right, we'll see how that goes. So that's the much that we can take. I'm just struggling to get a photograph out of the Daily Trust, but I think that's a bit belated now. Probably we'll take it some other time. That's on page 28. If we can see page 28 very briefly. I'm sure that our director has told us that we're out of time. There's a funny photograph there. It says it's from it's a sign in Dubai, there's a shop in Dubai. It says, buy one shoe, get one shoe free. It'll be a pair of shoes, actually. Mohamed Bello, we'd like to thank you, for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with the challenges of managing political parties in Nigeria.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Win a trip to Dubai in the 2018 Three Crowns Mom of the Year promo. Visit www.femininelounge.com/competition to find out more.
3 Crowns Milk. Healthy moms, happy families.
All right, thank you for staying with us up to this moment. And to kickstart our conversation on challenges of managing political parties, now we bring you this background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
A political party is an organized group of people with common view who come together to contest elections and hold power in government. These are groups of people who believe in certain ideologies of a particular party. As countries differ to each other, so are the numbers of political parties with their manifestos. In Nigeria, there are about 68 political parties, and management of these parties has been a major issue. As much as members of these parties are expected to pay their dues for maintenance of offices, salaries, as well as other running costs, they also depend on subventions given to them by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), which is 30% of the Commission's annual grant shared across board to all registered political parties, while 70% is shared among parties that won National Assembly elections in proportion to the number of seats won. This was in line with Section 91(2) of the Electoral Act of Nigeria's Constitution before being repealed. Previously, many of the parties existed based on the financial reward INEC gives them as support to prepare for elections. Between 2003 and 2009, INEC released about 3 billion naira to political parties as subvention. By virtue of this provision, it is financially attractive and rewarding for a group of persons to form a political party solely for INEC subvention, which in some cases run into millions of naira annually then. However, once INEC subvention stopped, most of the smaller political parties find it difficult to fund their activities, knowing fully well that some of these political parties don't have permanent offices, with some having their offices at rented apartments, shopping malls, and even motor parks. As 2019 election draws nearer, INEC has said the number of political parties in the country has continued to increase, with over 100 political associations seeking registration, aside the 68 duly registered, and these may cause challenges for the Commission in the election. Now, what does it take to manage a political party generally? Can political parties remain relevant without proper funding? These are some of the issues guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be discussing shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that backgrounder. Now, joining us to discuss these issues, we have a one-time regular face on Good Morning Nigeria, Professor Sam Ego, a professor of political science and currently the resident electoral commissioner in Niger State. Professor Sam Ego, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you and good morning.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is Mrs. Georgina Dakpokpo. She's the chairperson of the Young Democratic Party. Mrs. Dakpokpo, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Same here, good morning.
All right. And then also here with us in the studios is Mr. Ezenwa Nwango, chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. Ezenwa Nwango, regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you. Good morning.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen and lady, you're welcome to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. But I would like to begin with Professor Sam Ego, who is a professor of political science. Prof, here we are in a country where we have about 68 registered political parties and about 100 parties seeking registration. Now, give us a sense of what it takes to manage a political party.
Yeah, I think it's a very big challenge. But I think the first point I would like to make, and that is what we need to factor in before we commence that discussion. And the point is that political parties, by virtue of what they are, the role assigned to them in our democracy, and the hope that, you know, this democracy will endure if we have political parties that are democratic and responsive, is that they have a political and moral obligation to project to the entire society their own commitments to democratic values and tenets. And that is where the whole question of managing political parties begins from. Because to make political parties do this, the Constitution, the Electoral Acts, the Constitution of political parties, all of them are very clear in many of their sections and provisions about how to run political parties in a way that can enhance democracy. First, in terms of their own obedience of their rules, and laws, regarding, for example, how to select their leaders and how to select, people that are going to run for public offices. In the same measure, the 1999 Constitution, the Electoral Act, is clear about the role that INEC has to play to make political parties conform, to those processes and ideals, and also the Electoral Act. So, if you have a democracy like our own, with 68 political parties, people are going to run for over 1,000 public offices. They have to hold conventions. They have to hold congresses. They have to hold primaries. You have to design a ballot paper that reflects all these parties. You require, party agents, of 68 parties to be present at every polling unit. Should they have the capacity to do so? All this throw up a lot of challenges, and therefore, it then, throws up the whole question of what do we do with the current situation? How far can we go in regulating parties? What is the strength and capacity of INEC to attend all the party congresses and conventions and primaries? How do we get political leaders to conform to their own rules enshrined in their constitution and their own commitment to their members? These are big challenges, and we really need to think through, in terms of what do we do, in terms of getting political party leaders to adhere to their own rules. What do we do to enhance the capacity of INEC to be able to regulate and to monitor effectively if INEC remains what it is, without the uncoupling or the unbundling, as has been advocated in the past? We need to think about how, in Ekiti election, over 18,000 votes were voided, So if you are going to have more party symbols on the ballots, what is going to happen in the absence of high-level political education to enable people make choices correctly and based on what is going to be useful? So these are issues that I think we need to think through, and in the interest of our democracy. But the burden, in my opinion, must be put on political parties as democratic institutions to behave democratically in terms of what their members want, in terms of what their own constitution and rules of procedures also say. Because at the end of the day, we are not asking parties to do something outside their own purview, but something they have committed to do in their own constitution. So that moral burden must be put on party leaders, and that without political parties that are democratic and responsible, you can't have this democracy endure.
Professor Sam Egu, thank you very much. A number of points that you have raised. Mrs. Dapopo and SN1 Wango, before we get to the area of oversight by INEC with regard to elections, let's focus now on the internal organic management or mismanagement of political parties. Mrs. Dapopo, you listen to Professor Sam Egu. Here we are, political parties themselves have their own constitutions, they have their own rules, but why does it appear difficult for political parties to abide by their own internal governance mechanisms?
Thank you for your question. Managing a political party is actually easy, and then it's also complex at the same time, and I'll explain why. It's complex in the sense that you have people from different backgrounds with different opinions. They have their own different thoughts of how they think the party should be run or what their input should be towards building the party. And then it's easy because as a political leader, you should learn to listen to those opinions, a bit of opinions, and make sure you have an all-inclusive administration. Just like he has said, internal democracy. However, there's another angle that we should look at in also answering him. That is the issue of funding. Ordinarily, in an ideal society, the members of the parties fund the party through payment of dues and donations. But that is not the case, unfortunately, in Nigeria. Many members, when you go out there and tell them about dues, they are wondering, why do we have to pay dues? Because we have the two big parties practically paying for all their participation in their parties. Why then do you ask us to pay dues? Why do you want us to contribute towards the building of the party? And there's this popular saying that he that pays the piper dictates the tune. If you're a member, you're able to pay your dues as at when due and make your donations, then you have a say That's the ideal situation. But what we have mostly in Nigeria today is one person pays the piper, and unfortunately he dictates the tune. But that's not the case in all parties, but that's just the reality of what's on ground.
Yeah, drilling down. There are provisions in the constitutions of the parties. Why is it difficult for political party managers to abide by their own constitution, freely entered into by themselves, or if you like, by the initial promoters of the party, and to which others then subscribed?
It's in that regard, it has to do with internal democracy. I just explained one of the major reasons why. And then, of course, we have there's always an exception to every rule. There are probably some leaders who think they are high and mighty. Because they're leaders of the party, they dictate what should happen in the party. And that is, of course, anti-democratic. And I think in that regard, we need to train political parties more, managers more, on what their duties are. It doesn't matter what's in their constitution, it's basically the same across board, across all political parties. So they need to receive more trainings on what is expected of them as democratic leaders of the political parties.
Yeah, I think we have to go to Ezewan Wagu this time around. Ezewan Wagu, internal democracy has been lacking over time, over the years, in both small or big parties. And from what we have had so far in this conversation, it does seem that the big fish in the political parties do not want to adhere to the rules and regulations which they themselves set up to establish the political parties. What is the problem here?
Well, I think that the examples that the dominant political parties have put out, especially from inception, and the way those parties were formed, had become very injurious to building, proper party, proper political parties. Immediately after, especially in this republic, after 1999, when you formed the PDP and the other political parties, you saw that people who had their hand in the public till at some point in time brought those resources to driving those political parties. And eventually, when governments were formed, those executives ambushed the structures of those parties. In ambushing the structures of those parties, they sidelined the leadership of the political parties as elected. Now, what then happened was that you started hearing people call themselves leaders of the party. You had the president at that time, President Obasanjo, appropriate to himself the title of the leader of the party. And immediately that happened, he started taking party meetings away from party offices to the residence, to the villa, and began to usurp the powers of the organs of the political parties, the national working committees, the neck of the party. He became everything. And the governors who took that example became leaders of the party in their states. And when they became leaders of the party in their states, the chairman of local government became leaders of the party in local government and completely elbowed elected officials. So in terms of party administration, we at that point in time strangled, and we have not been able to make a conversation that pays attention to political party administration generally. Take the dominant political parties. Ask yourself, when last did you see any political party host a party conference, policy dialogue on any issue? Go and find out when last did they train any of their staff locally, outside. The institutes that even some of the political parties set up, the PDI, for instance, is in a comatose state. So you find out that these executives began to think that, that these things could just become vote-catching machines. So candidate selection processes were determined not in the party secretariat. for the dominant political parties. So you find out that it is the governor, it is the president who he doesn't want. The crisis that you are even seeing within the political parties today has something to do with that dominance, that reckless dominance of the governors in determining who does what, who doesn't get what, and all of that. So this conversation needs to get a little deeper in terms of what do we truly have parties. And my sister was talking about membership. And anytime I hear that, I just laugh. The dominant political parties have tried to do biometric registration for their political party, for their members. Why did it fail? We have never asked that question. Because those of us who are keen, election democracy enthusiasts, go around and see that when you say party agents, for instance, you won't be surprised that the man who did party agents for party A will be party agent for another party in another election. And even the ones we are registering now, the new political parties we are registering, the people who registered those political parties have appropriated presidential candidacy to themselves already, even without primaries. They are already going about, saying they are. So internal party democracy will have to come from membership, from members who understand and agree that they are going to be stakeholders and not stake seekers in the party. If they are stakeholders, it means that the issue of dues that she's talking about will not be an issue. If you pay dues, then but you are coming to party convention, it is the chairman or whoever who will transport you, pay you stipends for a party that you belong to. So there is something that diminishes in all of that, and I'm happy that we are positing that as we go into this registration. But Prof talked about these 68 political parties. I think INEC can begin to think about conditions for appearing on the ballot. What you need to fulfill certain conditions to appear on the ballot. It can't be an all-comers affair. If you have a political party who will score 2 votes in a governorship election, 3 votes in a governor, that political party has no business appearing on the ballot. It should go and contest for councillorship or chairmanship, because there are you can be a local party. You don't necessarily have to be a national party. So INEC can begin to think in terms of how do we create conditions for you appearing on the ballot, so that we don't go into 2019 with 150 political parties wanting to, it's going to be a huge challenge.
Again, I appreciate your comments. Just to say that the ballot access restriction, which you're talking about now, it has to be grounded in law. INEC couldn't possibly on its own just indicate that, listen, if you don't meet a certain threshold, then you couldn't be on the ballot. As we said, those are issues pertaining to INEC oversight of the electoral process. But some of the issues that you have raised with regard to the internal coherence of the political parties, I would like Professor Samego to speak to those issues. Ezewa talked about path dependence. We have seen it, citing the examples, if you like, the uncomplimentary examples of the big parties at the onset of the Fourth Republic, PDP, for instance, AD, or whatever they then eventually became, plus what we have seen as the virtual capture of the parties by plutocrats.
Well, I think, these are key issues that we need to explain and probably see how we can deal with them. Ezewa's story, is a story of how unwritten rules and unwritten conventions, outweigh written rules and written conventions. And I think the height of that was sometime, I think in 2007, when the president of this country woke up and dissolved the membership of his own party and said people should go back and register all over. That really shows that one big man, has taken over the party and can dissolve the membership. And at that point, they could say, you are not qualified to come back into the party. I think, for me, that is the highest form, of disorderliness that you can find in a party system. But let us not forget that we have a history of party system in this country where political parties were strong, where party supremacy, was respected, where the leader of the party summoned the president to a meeting and he didn't default. So what we are seeing in the Fourth Republic is not really part of our legacy and culture, and we need to question and interrogate what is happening. And I think basically a lot of things have happened. But what we're actually dealing with is a situation in which politicians themselves are the problem. Because if they are not the problem, the base of coming together into a political party is because you have already had fundamental consensus among yourself about how to govern. You have a sense of what you want society to be, and that is what comes before. That precedes, people coming together to form parties. But if that is not the understanding of people starting to govern society from the ideal, but are interested in creating platforms which can win election, regardless of the values and the commitment they have to society, then you have that problem. And I think that is the source of the problem we have, that you have political parties that are merely electoral machines, and they do not even subscribe, to certain ideals or a certain interpretation of what they want society to be. And when you have an election in which you have an elite pact, people coming together on the basis of where they can win, and then you get into another election, and that pact unravels. What you then find is people moving from one place to another, precisely because they are not bounded together by any sense of a common ideology, a common sense, a program, that they want society to follow if they win power. So we must return to that source. We must return to that source. That parties must be formed on the basis of what members agree to be their interpretation of what they want society to be. But if it is about where to win and win at all costs, you can't solve this problem.
All right. It means swinging with the pendulum.
Yeah.
Now, from the analysis posited by both Ezenwa and Professor Egu, it does appear that most of the political parties in Nigeria, the foundation upon which they were laid, are shaky. And at this point, I'd like to come to Georgina, who happens to be chairman of Partners for, who happens to be the chairman of Young Democratic Party. Now, talking about foundation laying and the ideology, we've also mentioned in the course of our introduction to this program, strange bedfellows coming together, and that, of course, grows or misunderstanding, disagreements, and what have you. Now, tell us what should be, as a chairman of a party, what should the foundation be from where the other aspects of a party and the party management should spring from?
In answering that question, I'd like to take our minds back to the provisions of the Constitution that says that our ideologies as political parties actually stem from Chapter 2 of the Constitution. So that means basically all our ideologies are actually similar as it is, because it's from the same source. So that begs the question of why then can't people cross over from one party to the other? Because even like you said, it's not in our political history. The previous constitutions did not have this restricting factor. That's why you had strong political parties in the Second and Third Republic, because they had that independence sort of to form their ideologies. But it's with the coming of the Fourth Republic, 1999 Constitution, that makes it explicitly clear that you must conform with the provisions of the Constitution in setting up your party. The ideologies, your Constitution must be in conformity, a certain standard. So it's kind of restrictive. And it means we're all in the same pool, as it were. So about, we should have different ideologies. Of course, for YDP, for instance, Young Democratic Party, we came into being, and we came together because we felt we weren't seeing enough representation of the young people in the political process. So that's why we came on board. There are several other parties that have their reasons for coming on board. But even at that, when we went to INEC to get registered, we had to go to court. We came into being by operation of law because INEC could not register because of that name, Young. Because they felt we were restricting the membership foundation of the party for the young people. But that is not the case, because the Constitution doesn't even allow us to do that. It's open to all Nigerians. I understand, I think even the Socialist Party of Nigeria also had the same problem because they were socialists. And that is not what our economy, what our ideology as a country is. So they probably had that same problem when they were being registered. So it's an issue of the laws need to be reviewed. Our constitution needs to be reviewed to make it, for instance, in the UK and the US, they have established ideologies. They have the Labour Party here. In the US, it's almost like it's a tradition. From when you are born, you know your family is a conservation party or the Democrats. So you just live your Republican or Democrat. So you live your life like that. But we don't have that situation in Nigeria because we don't have established. We have laws that limit our pool to just a certain sector.
See, there's something she didn't clear up. I want her to clear up, you know. Okay. America has one constitution. Yes. And now you have told us that there are ideologies, you know, party ideologies there. You know, when a constitution is made, does it now mean that you and I will have the same ideology when it comes to how to develop the country? So now, I think that's where politicians are missing it in Nigeria. Your party is one of the youngest parties in the Nigerian system as of today. And perhaps from what you have said, there is no specified ideology. You just joined and first following the constitution. Wouldn't that be a time when we could say, look, this is our ideology? Isn't there a possibility? Because in America, there's ideology, there's constitution.
The American political system stemmed from the Civil War. They had the Confederation, and then the people that I can't remember the two names now, but it was a life. They had the North and the South, so the lifestyle already before the constitution even came into being. So that's the difference. In Nigeria, where we've gone through a very colorful political history as it is. We had the military rule and all that, and so it's not so easy to distinguish. But for most political parties, the ideology is about the welfare of the nation, of the citizens. That's a common factor. The welfare of the citizens. There's no. We had in the Second Republic, we had parties that were limited to a certain section of the country, like he has suggested, a certain section. Sorry, that's the one that suggested that a certain section of the country that were created for a certain sector, maybe like shoemakers and the masses, the lower class of people. That took care of that for them. They had a specific ideology.
Okay, I'm wondering, still with you, before we bring in Georgina, let's clear up a few things. I would like you to give us the experience of the Young Democratic Party along the lines of the points articulated by Professor Samego. And by the way, the two dominant political parties in the U.S. today, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they were not in existence at the time of the making of the American Constitution. The Republican Party grew out of the Whig Party, and that was in the 1800s. But let's return to this. What was your experience in forming the Young Democratic Party? Were they strange bedfellows, or were they like minds? What is it that you had in terms of visioning? Or, as Professor Samego has indicated, were you merely seeking to put together an electoral winning machine?
No, we weren't. It was a group of Nigerians who felt were being deprived of our participation in the political process. And we set out to set an example of what a political party should be. Our main focus is service to the people. We don't want to be leaders we didn't want to be leaders, and we still don't want to be leaders that lord it over the people. We want to be people that serve. So it's not just about a political winning machine. Of course, we have to win elections because of the provisions of the Electoral Act that says if you do not win, you could get deregistered. And that, my brother Ezenwa was suggesting that if you don't win enough votes, then you shouldn't be allowed to be on the ballot. So we also want to, it's like a vicious circle. You have to win. But all the same, in winning, you also have to not deviate from the reason for your being. That is...
What is your experience in then managing this group of persons who have formed the Young Democratic Party? Again, bearing in mind what the points that have been articulated, every party has a constitution in the first instance. That's one of the requirements for registration. A party's constitution is similar to the constitution of a company. A company, I mean, if those who are familiar with corporate law will know what I'm talking about. Memorandum of association, articles of association, you are bound, by the provisions on this. So what has been the experience of the Young Democratic Party in running itself in line with its own self-adopted constitution, of course, deriving from the laws of the land?
It's interesting because I'm just picturing one of our NEC meetings. When we attend NEC meetings, everybody comes to the Constitution. So as you are discussing, they're telling you, no, this is not what the Constitution says. So you are put in order. If we practice our Constitution to the letter, and also the Electoral Act, before we make any decisions, it's not a one-man decision-making process. We have to have, first the NWC discusses it, and then the NEC discusses it before we go out there and decide on what to do. It's an all-inclusive administration. We follow it to the letter.
Okay. All right, thanks a lot. As I want to go, let's bring you in again. A number of points that you had raised earlier. Plus, one of the issues you also touched on, that, look, political parties don't have to pretend to be national players. Even though the requirements for registration indicate that they have to have a national outlook. This is on account of what we experienced in the First Republic, where you were having all kinds of ethnic and religious-based political parties. So parties will have a national outlook, have offices in different parts of the country. But in terms of then becoming an electoral machine, could they then just zero in on certain locations and certain issues and then seek to, begin to, maybe from local government elections, even though we have challenges with SEC, and then the State House of Assembly, rather than pretending to be presidential candidates when they know they can't win any vote?
Well, for me, we still have not even bothered to interrogate the whole idea of registration. The whole idea of registration of political parties, for me, has not been settled. Whether you have to, how do they need to evolve, because when you register and place those conditions, pan-Nigerian, so you see people cooking up figures and statistics that they don't truly have. That's why your intro talked about going around and finding those offices. Many times they position people's homes for registration, position people's shops in the states for registration. So you need to interrogate the whole idea of registration, because when you place that condition, you make them to tell a lie of what they are not. So for me, I think it's still not settled. The next conversation around that for me will be, where are we getting our examples from? If you keep talking about the United States, all you just need to is to Google right now and find out that you have almost 400 political parties in the US, including extreme left, extreme right, Panthers, all kinds of people, green. They used to call them third parties. They thrive more on ideas. Okay? So the whole debate about whether marijuana should be legalized is driven by political parties who have those. So in a certain state, you have a dominant political pushing those ideas and aligning even with the dominant political parties in terms of the ideas that they have. So many times we confuse all of this because and then remember, it used to be that INEC was giving people some cash, they were supporting political parties with cash. Now that we are not doing that, allow these political parties to evolve. But what has happened is that the dominant political parties also have parastatals now. Most of what you have registered as political parties are really extension of those dominant political parties. So you come to a point where you just find out that 28 political parties have aligned. On what? Not on any concrete conversation in terms of, like you keep pointing about ideology. My sister was talking about chapter 2. Where you are put is the chapter 2 of the Constitution, that you need to conform with the chapter 2. And be honest, no political party in Nigeria is interested in that chapter 2, because the chapter 2 is about the people. Is truly about the people. So if you put energy into that chapter 2 as a political party and flag it as your ideology, even the conversation about restructuring will take a backseat. Because what does this chapter 2 say? It says government has responsibility to provide for the welfare of citizens. Education from where? From primary to university. Which political party has come to tell us that it will give free and compulsory education from primary to university? That's not in the conversation. Because we don't even create opportunity for... The biggest threat to our democracy is the absence of debates. Debate is taking a backseat. You are no longer having political parties debate on any issues. We have razzmatazz, wave brooms, wave umbrella, invite Nollywoods to play in your... And then everybody goes home. So until we force them, we are going to force them, because this whole idea that all the ideology is the same. There is PRP, there is Social Democratic Party, there is COA Party. They don't share the same ideology with the dominant political parties who have a pretension to liking corruption or not liking it. All of those are issues. But we need to, as citizens, force the political parties to say, look, we want a differentiation in terms of what you stand for. If we can't have you, if Kingsley Osadolo is running for election and I can't say the difference between him and Kirian, then there's a problem. There's a problem. If they are the same, then we should just have a one-party state. The whole idea of multi-party democracy is differentiation in terms of what you stand for, even as a candidate and as a political party. If we can't find that differentiation, then this registration may just be a kind of transactional engagement, waiting for who will buy. The same way they are buying votes, they may also be selling the political parties as we go forward.
Thank you very much indeed, Ezenwa. Well, before we go on a short break, I'd like to put this question to Professor Egu. There seem to be many traits, to this formation of political parties in Nigeria. Let's take, for instance, between 2003 and 2009, INEC gave money or funds to political parties as part of what the law says as at that time. That has been prohibited at the moment. Now, no subvention for parties, yet to have numerous parties come into play. What about funding of these political parties? Who are responsible for the funding of the political parties? Is there godfatherism in the system? Professor Egu.
Well, I think we started from the premise that there should be public funding of parties. And that was why in 1999, you saw INEC disbursing money to political parties. But we also knew what happened that time. That became an incentive for people who ordinarily, who concocted facts, that they are associations to be registered as political parties. And then at a point that was stopped. But the truth of the matter today is that the Constitution has not changed. That law is there. What it says is that the National Assembly, anytime it pleases it, should make the law about how to distribute public money to political parties. Until that law is made, they are not currently enjoying that. But if you listen to the debate that is going on, particularly from the smaller parties, the argument they are making is that those parties that are big enough to form government, either at federal or state level, are actually being funded by government money. That it is those governments that are making it possible for them to survive as political parties. And therefore, they are raising the moral argument that even when you do not have public funding, as known by everybody, those parties that are thriving are funded by the governments they have in power. You therefore need to return to that regime. So my point is that the smaller parties depend on what their members contribute, and so on and so forth. So they are disadvantaged. And therefore, we can say there's no public funding in terms of practice today. And I think there's a merit, in my opinion, that we need to have some form of public funding, not as largesse, but targeted funding to political parties, including the Young Democratic Party. If, for example, they say, look, we need support from INEC to develop a membership base, I think that targeted funding should be given to parties. If parties want money, to do a particular project, not just give away and then as grant, which you don't account for, I think I would like targeted funding in terms of capacity and policy development ability of political parties. Because in the end, political parties benefit democracy by becoming policy platforms. They become useful to democracy by having strong and identified membership base. Political parties, become useful to democracy by developing a set of ideas. Because if you're actually talking about choice of Nigerians have to choose between parties in terms of what they represent. And that's why I thought that the argument that the Chapter 2 of the Constitution says everybody should be the same, it's really not a good argument. Because parties afford citizens to make choice. And to differentiate yourself from the other party is the basis of providing that choice for citizens. And I think this is where what we need to put our argument into.
Professor Samego, thanks a lot. Chapter 2 actually deals with principles and objectives, not with mechanics of realizing those principles. And it's in the mechanics, some would argue, that we can find the differentiation. Now, some of the points that have also been touched on with regard to the funding of the political parties, we also saw what happened in this country in 1984. When, after the Second Republic collapsed and some of the political leaders of that era were put on trial at various tribunals. It had to do with the fact that some of them were alleged and then convicted on the grounds that they had used state resources in funding the political parties at that time. There were 5 major political parties at the time. There was UPN, there was NPP, there was GNPP, and then there was also NPN. All right, yeah. We also saw what happened with the crisis in the First Republic with regard to governments, funding the political parties, funding in terms of the kind of plutocracy that we are seeing today, which virtually has no restraint. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll take your comments by way of tweets and then continue with the conversation.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Win a trip to Dubai in the 2018 Three Crowns Mom of the Year promo. Visit www.femininelounge.com/competition to find out more.
3 Crowns Milk. Healthy moms, happy families.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. No be only to connect lights.
Come do it yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who will they look for with this?
Oh.
Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from over.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
And thank you for staying with us up to this moment on Good Morning Nigeria. And at this point, we'd like to inform you that some viewers are beginning to respond to our conversation this morning. And we'll begin from Law Alpha's own entry. He says the moral obligation and selfless service by political parties are far from the vision and mindset of the current political parties. Politicians have used the political parties' formation to find jobs for themselves, and it's sad that all of them want to go solo. Formation of political parties have unfortunately become another employment opportunities for the political money bags to grab power.
Now, Olowokere Olajide has this tweet. The management of political parties is difficult because of the poverty of mind of the citizenry. And to the masses decide to have their own political party managed by them without modern influence, the story will remain the same.
Now, from Dilajak Solomon, a number of factors have contributed to lack of political representation in Nigeria. These include electoral fraud, godfatherism, lack of internal democracy, cross-carpeting, partisan rule of the electoral management body, and security agencies. This is not good for our democracy.
Arisha Monday tweets, in my view, most of the political party managers are not democratic, so they usually impose their own interests on the members.
Now, Godwin Johnson, Nigeria's politics should be on her feet, but it isn't because we are managing political parties rather than party candidates. If we manage party candidates properly, parties won't need to be managed, because we are trying to use the party as a PR for candidates. It's expensive.
Akins Dada is the next tweet that we're having. It says, money politics is the bane. There should be clear ideologies and relevant mission or vision, as well as values built into organizational culture and prominently observable in the leadership of each party. Now, devoid of leadership prototypes, we need credibility and a sense of direction.
Now, Festus Akimbewa, impunity, lack of opportunity for party members in intra-party decision-making, corruption within parties, and lack of capacity to deal with internal conflicts are challenges facing our political parties. And these challenges are simply inflicting chaos on our democracy. He says that this is sad. Kingsley, at this point, let's raise this issue of party discipline and the treatment of perhaps recalcitrant fellows in parties. So party discipline has become a huge challenge in all the political parties across board. And that brings about cross-carpeting, impeachment, even when you are impeaching someone with the least number of members of the assembly, and that goes on and on. And as you established earlier on, it happened way back at the beginning of the Fourth Republic. And I'd like to bring in Mwagu here. That's because he has a way of dissecting some of these anomalies in our political system.
Well, if you talk about discipline, then it will go back to even membership. You can only discipline somebody who has a stake in something. If you don't have a stake, if there are a few people who have a stake, and depending on their stake, and their idea, sometimes even inflated idea of their own contributions, you may have challenges. But let's just look at where we have come from. There is a party called DPP. It was supported from Sokoto State. As soon as there was a transition in Sokoto State, that party has gone into limbo. There was another one supported from Abia State. As soon as there was a transition in Abia State, what's that party now? It went under.
Some name.
It went under. So resources of the state is what people use to become big. This whole idea of big dominant political party is state resources that makes them big. So I support the position of a targeted funding for political parties to bring them up to a point where they can at least be a bit competitive. If we don't do that, the advantage that the dominant political parties have and their arrogance will continue. And the stranglehold of chief executives on those political parties will not abate. So you discipline if you have a national working committee. National working committee is vested with the responsibility to discipline, and then you take it eventually to your neck. And then if NEC finishes, you go to your convention. But if a governor supports the hosting of a convention 3 times, back to back, and says, hold this convention in my state, all of you come, I'll take care of you, all of you came to that state, and whatever comes out of that place, the man has 80% component in determining his outcome. He provides who the chairman of the political party is. That chairman cannot query him. That chairman is incapable of issuing a query to a governor who made him chairman. Until we come face to face with these issues and say, to what extent do we allow individuals, and I like the word used, plutocrats, until we take off the stranglehold of plutocrats in the political parties, we are going to come back to have these conversations. Because disobedience is, if the chairman, for instance, who is installed by governors, or a governor issues a query to that governor, it is indiscipline. Indiscipline from who? Who is being disciplined now? Because it's the party that should discipline its members. But if the members are the ones who drive the leadership and positions it to take whatever position it takes, it's just like the states and their state legislature. If you want to make any law in the state legislature, it's better to go and talk to a governor. Because if you talk to the governor, he then tells the legislature. That's the anomalies that we face even in party administration, because it is the tail that is wagging the head. I saw a little bit of Chief Adisa Akinloye, manning MPN. I didn't see any time where they had a party meeting and the president of the country, Alhaji Shehu Shagari, was sitting at the top table. He will sit with because he's a member of the political party. But today, you see that the president, in fact, if the president does not attend the meeting, the ruling party will not start that meeting until he comes. And he's supposed to just be a member. So who is going to discipline the president? Who is a member of a political party? Chairman of a political party that he is the one supporting, paying rent for? Just one moment. Political parties, we have had political parties who have been on for this past 18 years, living in rented apartments. Who is paying those rents?
All right. Thank you very much. Professor Samego, some would argue that the instances of indiscipline that you find amongst party members all derive from the foundational challenges of the parties. As Ezenwa indicated, the path dependence that we have seen, where there's a self-proclaimed leader of the party who is not, is a position not recognized as one of the organs of the party, plus all the consequences. How do we disrupt this, shall we say, misbehavior of the managers of the political parties to make them organic, to make them effective, right from first your membership, respect for your organs, including even if when you want to discipline somebody. I mean, you find some of these knee-jerk reactions. You are suspended, you are expelled. Another person will say, no, come back, because you expel me, I leave you, I go to another platform. How do we ensure again, I use the word, the organic management of political parties, disrupting the path dependence of the bad example we have seen since the beginning of 1999?
Yeah, Kingsley, thank you. I think this is a very important question. Let me remind our Nigerians that when we are discussing political parties in Nigeria and their misbehavior, it's not peculiar. It's a global problem. Political parties are in decline. In fact, one of the books I've enjoyed reading is the book by Tim Carothers, who draws our attention that globally, but more importantly, in emerging democracies like our own, political parties are the weakest link in the chains of democracy. And the realities are the kind of things we are discussing. I think in this country, we need to return to the fundamental of party management and party organization. If you look at the logic of political party building in Nigeria, the unquestionable logic is that you build your party structure from below, from the world level, then to the local government, then to the state and to the national level. And what that entails in terms of, the fact that you have to start, if you are selecting your leadership, you start from that world. So that is the structure that you need to recognize in terms of party organization and party discipline. So if I belong to a ward, the people in that, members of that ward, the leaders of that ward don't even know. Then at the national level, you are disciplining somebody without returning to the ward where you should begin from. But that is the logic of party building in this country. And unless we return to that logic of party building from below, then to the top, then you are going to miss the point. Because what then you want, you are confronted with, is a reality in which Abuja-based politicians actually take the laws into their hands without respect for the organs of their own party from the world level. And I think this is what we need to preach, to party leaders. And I'm very happy that since 2013, the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Jos has created a platform for training party leaders. And I've looked at the curricula of that institute. One of the key ones is on party management. And I'm happy that political parties are also sending people there regularly for training. My advice to Nigerians, not to be frustrated, is that building parties and developing them is a long haul. Just like democracy is a long haul. But we must have to struggle And we must be seen as struggling, empowering the structures of the party, the organs of the party. So that, because that is where the spirit of obeying party constitution begins from. And this is my submission on that.
Well, I'm wondering, for some Igwe, but it's not necessarily an advertisement. Do we have a sense of, I know you're a professor of political science at University of Jos before your current national assignment. Do we have a sense of the parties that are sending, their managers or operatives to NIPS for training? Or is it part of the year-long program?
No, they have, the trainings are broken down, targeted at different, levels of party leadership. And virtually all the parties send their members to NIPS for training. Some, for example, are secretaries of parties at state level. Some are public relations officer. And I must say that the NIPS is also doing something that is very ingenious, realizing, for example, that training party leaders to become policy and leadership platforms is so important. They decided to budget for it, because this was an initiative that was started by donors in 2013, although the EU has now come massively to inject funds. But the point is that virtually all parties are exposed to this training. And I hope that knowledge-driven party management will have a place in this country. Because what you find among politicians is to discard knowledge, and they don't want knowledge because they are in a hurry, to get power. And so when you want to bring knowledge, it becomes grammar. I hope in the long run they will accept the logic of knowledge-driven party management.
And of course, Kingsley, when that knowledge is translated to reality in terms of the managerial capacity of those who are trained, it becomes better for the parties. But Kingsley, let me put this question to Georgina. The aspect of cross-carpeting, or what we know better today as defecting from one political party to the other. It may be constitutional, but the preponderance of it is becoming ridiculous. I just hope that none of your members is trying to defect to the big parties. So what's your take on this issue of defection?
Okay, before I come to that, I'd like to add to what he just said about NIPS and PPLDPC. Actually, all political parties, through IPAC, I'm the Deputy Secretary of IPAC, that's the Inter-Party Advisory Council. So they all sent, we just about 3 weeks ago, just completed a set of training for publicity secretaries, for legal advisors on policy, making, and then also for national chairman on ADR. So it's an ongoing process. And it's,
what was the experience of those who went from your interaction with them?
For instance, my legal advisor said now he realized that what we've been doing since is not policy making.
That's what everyone was saying.
That there's so much that he learned from it. So it's welcome. It's something that we take seriously in IPAC and something we intend to pursue in the coming years. Okay. And then to answer your question about it's for lack of a better word, it's ridiculous actually. Because let me stray a bit towards the Ekiti elections. There was so much argument on social media about, oh, PDP did this in 2015 or 4 years ago, 2014, so it's right for APC to do what they're doing. And I said, people seem to have forgotten. It's not about PDP or APC, it's about the people. That should be the main concern. If APC did this and PDP, then when would this vicious circle end? So I think it's ridiculous that we're having a democracy where a minority is impeaching a sitting governor. It's ridiculous that we have people being threatened to be impeached because they want to cross carpet, which is, like you said, is enshrined in our constitution. And the question is, why are they campaign? That should be the question the party should be asking themselves, not fighting them. Find out what is happening. It's probably the, like we said earlier when we were discussing off camera, it's probably because of the internal mismanagement of internal crisis within the party. So it still boils down to management and having the political managers of the party, the managers of the party doing the right thing at the right time and having enough experience and having enough democratic principle to do what is right as at when it's due.
Let me ask this practical question. Again, we have another set of twists, but before we come to those twists, let me ask this question. Being an insider in terms of being a party manager, because we had taken on this when the gale of defection happened on the floor of the Senate and then the House of Representatives. Usually in the past, when a political leader says, look, he's defecting from one party to another, he or she will claim that he's coming with his supporters, 5,000 supporters, 10,000 supporters. They have been received, you know, you have the razzmatazz as SNY was describing. In the season of defection and maybe thereafter, is it possible for Nigerians in general to have a sense of the membership database? Do parties therefore know how many members they have? If this one has cross-campaign with 5,000 supporters, Georgina, you are chuckling. All right, so take the question.
Again, I'd like to go to a message I read on WhatsApp, where a particular person was campaigning from one party to another in Edo State, and he said he was coming with 100,000 members. And then another person was campaigning from that same party with 100,000 members. And people are wondering, so how many people are left? Are there still people left in that party at all if you are going with 200 members? And talking about membership is unfortunate because in Nigeria, you have a citizen that belongs to probably 5 different parties, political parties. He has a membership card of 5 different political parties because as far as it's concerned, this one is doing rally, they're going to share money. So I'm a member of this party at this time. And then, so I think we need more citizen participation in the process for them to understand what their duties are in the democratic process. It's not just about collecting money for the down. Because it's easy to blame the political parties, but they are made from, they are citizens, they are drawn from the citizens of the country. And the citizens actually have more power as it is to drive the process than even the political parties. The political parties are there to even serve the citizens. So we need more public enlightenment, more citizen education on what their role is in the democratic process.
And I think that Kinsley, what the Constitution actually says about the campaign is that if your political party has division, established division, that you can go. But what we're seeing lately...
that relates to if you are a member of a legislative house, whether at the state level or at the national level. It doesn't concern the executive. Yeah, there was a decision, the Supreme Court decision on the article, on the article defection. They say we're morally wrong, but...
But what happens today is that if 1 or 2 people, you know, have issues with the political party, they camp based on the fact that there is faction. When even the faction is not established, well, that's a matter for...
Those factions are created by the people that want to decamp themselves.
That's right. Okay, with 100,000, 100,000, 100 multiple.
Now let's go to
some reactions.
Yes, exactly.
By the tweets that we have. Sani Mankala Makoji, we're taking this again from him. It says, most of the political parties are built on individualism, godfatherism, and greed. That's why impunity and imposition of candidates have become the order of the day. Now, those small gods in parties who finance them dictate and draw borderlines for others. A situation where some political parties operate like mobile banking, that is, no visible office, no ideology, no capacity to even do political awareness, is unacceptable. INEC itself should be reformed in order to set a standard for the existence of these political parties.
And from Aminu Haliru, I think most of the challenges in managing political parties in Nigeria are lack of ideology from the parties, lack of a rigid party constitution. However, members of the party always felt that they own the party because they finance the activities of the party.
And Abambala tweets, now a look at many, if not all, the political parties and the Nigerian political ambience will reveal ideological deficits. It's therefore difficult for such platforms of people with varied and conflicted interests to be successfully managed.
Now, Haladu says you can only manage what has basis. Nigerian political parties are not founded on clear ideologies. There can be committed leadership and followership only to ideas and ideologies. Our parties reflect individuals. There can be as many parties as individual politicians.
Again, Amambala on tweets. In the First and Second Republics, parties were known for what they stood for. The NPN in the Second Republic was known for its conservative credo, while the UPN stood for welfarism. A look at today's parties would reveal a complete contrast of these indices. Today's parties are selfish interests, and this lead to defection.
Okay, Anthony Naholo Abduhemen, I hope I got that correctly.
Abulimen.
Abulimen, all right. Now, the president, governors, local government chairmen should not be leaders of political parties because they came to offices through the existing leaders of their various political parties.
Victor Oyeoswama twist that the lack of ideology in the formation and management of political parties is one of the challenges that parties have. Godfatherism and lack of internal democracy are also issues. We need to strengthen our party system in order to grow our democracy.
Now, Mike Anyako says, indiscipline is the main challenge of managing political parties in Nigeria. A political party needs a thorough leadership to survive. Paucity of funds is also another challenge because it makes it easier for political parties being hijacked by money-bagged individuals. Kinsley, it's time for final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I want to go back to Ezenwa. I had posed that question to Professor Sam Ego on the basis of what he had said in terms of what now we can describe as the learned bad behavior of the political parties in not being democratic, in not being managing themselves effectively and efficiently. How do we disrupt this bad behavior and get them back into line?
We can take example from what Malema did to the African National Congress in South Africa. Malema has caused a revolution within the ANC by the shaking that took place. And then you could see the basis of leaving the ANC. But in leaving the ANC, the ANC had to face the mirror on itself and say, look, if we don't allow this to happen, then there will be an issue. But the more important thing is membership. We can't talk about it enough. We had an experience somewhere where IRI was training political parties, and we had a registration desk for the different political parties. People will come to the desk and take their phone and call somebody and say, which party do you want me to write my name in training? Prof is here. One of the most difficult things to get from political parties for party agents is list of party agents before the election so that they can be identified, doing identity card for party agents, because they are not there. We need to deal with membership. Disruption can only come from under, as Prof said. All right,
Ezenwa, I would like to thank you indeed for your contributions this morning. Time is not on our side, and we are rounding off today's conversation. Ezenwa, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms, thank you for coming. And the only lady among us here who, of course, is a chairperson or chairman of a Young Democratic Party, Georgina Debubu. It's been good hearing from you this morning.
Thank you for having me. And,
of course, Professor Sam Egu, Professor of Political Science. Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts and your professional know-how in this edition of the program.
Thank you.
All right, now, next is...
All right, yeah, we're dealing with sports right away. And, of course, the various clubs after the World Cup and just before the kickoff of the new season, Nigerian players have also joined their various clubs in Europe and elsewhere for warm-up matches. Let's get to hear from our sports desk.
As Nigerians await Coach Gernot Roy's most-announced list for the 2019 African Cup of Nations qualifier against Chelsea's next month, the country's players playing abroad have also been impressive, striving to make the squad list as they also seek to get a position at the various clubs in the new season. Super Eagles winger Ahmed Musa could finally have gotten